In this recording, we're going to look at the psychology of learning and the psychology of performing physical skills. Sports psychology is the sports science concerned with the psychological and mental factors that influence and are influenced by participation in sport, exercise and physical activity. The aspects of this topic which we will consider include goal setting, feedback, communication and performance, anxiety, arousal and performance, visualization, self-esteem and models of coaching. Goal setting serves as a motivational tool and it's used commonly by athletes. The acronym SMARTER is often used to design goals which are the most relevant for an athlete. So the goal needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be accepted, it needs to be realistic, it needs to be time framed, so considering short-term goals and long-term goals. It needs to be exciting and it needs to be recorded. Most athletes are driven by motivation. Now that motivation may be intrinsic, which means their own personal enjoyment of performing an activity, their satisfaction, their feeling of self-worth, or it can be extrinsic, which is motivation through earning money, through being awarded trophies, through personal glory or recognition. Intrinsic motivation is the most desirable. Feedback and communication are very important for an athlete's psychological preparation. Now the feedback can be internal feedback through proprioception or kinesthesis, or it can be external feedback provided via knowledge of more or the outcome of the skill or the performance, or knowledge of the performance itself, so understanding the more details of the success of the performance. Depending on the characteristics of the athlete themselves and also on the activity or the skills or the sport, a certain level of arousal is required. So arousal meaning the readiness to participate. Anxiety, however, can equal fear of failure when the perceived demands appear greater than the perceived capabilities. The inverted U theory helps to explain the optimal level of arousal that an athlete requires in order to perform at their best. So the optimum level will depend on the nature of the task, whether it's complex or simple, the athlete's psychological makeup as well. Methods to increase or decrease arousal levels include progressive muscle relaxation techniques, centered breathing, imagery cues, motivational talks, music or video. So the inverted U theory describes performance as either poor or good, depending on the level of emotional arousal. And so with a low level of arousal, the performance is generally poor. At the other end of the scale, if there is a very high level of arousal, then the performance is also poor. So it is considered that there is required a moderate level of arousal in order to maximise performance. Now this will depend on the activity itself, whether it's a complex activity or a simple activity. So if we consider golf, the optimum level of arousal is slightly lower for a good level of performance compared with weightlifting. So the weightlifting athlete requires a high level of arousal for a good performance. When you consider the activity of golf, in which accuracy is an extremely important part of the the skill execution, you can imagine that a lower level of arousal is required compared with weightlifting, whereby the gross motor skills required in weightlifting are maximised and require a higher level of arousal for maximum muscle contraction. So optimum functioning or skill performance is also dependent on the athlete themselves. So if any two athletes, athlete A, athlete B, may differ according to their characteristics and may require differing emotional arousal in order to perform at their best. So the strategies that can be used to reduce anxiety, and quite often this is used for skills which require a high level of accuracy. The calming techniques can include muscular relaxation, breathing control, systematic desensitization. During a game activity, you can smile when you feel tension coming on. Remembering to have fun and enjoy the situation, and to practice in stressful situations to train yourself to cope with them. In contrast, in order to increase arousal levels, and quite often these are for activities which are whole body gross motor skills requiring maximum muscle contraction, some activities can include increasing breathing rate, acting energised. So if you have ever noticed how AFL teams warm up, quite often they will bump into each other and use yelling techniques to try to psych each other up, or listening to appropriate music. Visualisation is another technique that can assist with an athlete's psychological preparation. Mental practice can be used for a specific skill. So, for example, performing a javelin throw in athletics. Mental rehearsal can be used for a complete performance. So, typically this may be for a gymnastics routine or a diving performance, highboard diving into a pool. Mental review to recount a performance. So at a quarter-time break, half-time breaks, an athlete may think back to their performance and learn from that performance. Self-affirmation to improve self-confidence. So remembering back to a previous performance when the athlete was successful may serve to motivate them for future performances. The success of an athlete is highly dependent on their self-esteem. So self-esteem defined as a person's perceived view of themselves. Clearly the environment will influence a person's self-esteem. It's developed at a young age. It is about their self-efficacy, which means their understanding of how able they are to perform a particular skill, the perception of the ability to achieve a set task. The role of the coach is to provide a positive and nurturing environment. There are various models of coaching which would have an influence on the psychological preparation of an athlete. The different styles or models include authoritarian, in which the coach is domineering and they make all of the decisions. The democratic coaching style is one where the coach is open to suggestions, they guide the athlete rather than instructs. And a third style is called the casual style, where the coach's role is minimal and the players basically run the training and make their own decisions.